Welcome to the deep dive. Our mission today really is to cut through all the noise, give you a shortcut to understanding the complex forces shaping our world right now. We're diving into a recent report, Global Stability Under Strain, mid-2025 outlook. And, well, it paints a picture of a pretty precarious time globally.
It really does. The report breaks this down quite meticulously into four key areas, all interconnected: geopolitical tension, economic fragility, environmental challenges, and societal pressures. Each one is really acting like a stress point on the whole system.
Okay, let's unpack that. Starting with the geopolitical flashpoint seems right because the report details this escalating situation in the Middle East, specifically the U.S. strikes on Iranian nuclear sites, June 23rd, 2025. And what's really notable and kind of concerning is the first combat use of that GBU-57 bunker buster bomb.
Yeah, that's significant. It's not just new tech. Using it there signals a potential new threshold against hardened targets. Yeah. And Iran's response was pretty swift. Missile fire at U.S. bases in Qatar and Iraq. Thankfully, no reported casualties there. But, maybe more critically, Iran also threatened closing the Strait of Hormuz. That's huge. We're talking about, what, a fifth of the world's daily oil passing through there?
Wow. So an immediate hit to energy supplies. I saw prices jumped briefly.
They did, yeah. Hit a 5-month high, around $78 a barrel before pulling back below $74. But, the analysts are warning if that strait fully closes, we could see prices shoot above $110 a barrel. That's a serious shock.
And the global reaction was instant, right? Airspace closures in Qatar, Bahrain, Kuwait, calls for de-escalation pretty much everywhere. Europe, China, Russia, the UN. But then the report mentions Israel's retaliatory strikes against Iranian sites. Significant casualties there. It feels like a dangerous cycle.
It absolutely does. It really highlights how these military actions and economic threats are just so tightly linked, affecting global stability.
Yeah, and these geopolitical tremors, they're not just shaking governments, they're sending shockwaves right through the global economy.
Which brings us neatly to our next area, economic fragility. The World Bank, the UN, they're forecasting global growth dropping to around 2.4% in 2025. That's, the slowest pace since 2008 if you exclude the big recessions.
That's right. And it's not just a number. It points to a kind of fundamental fracturing in the global economic system. It's driven by a mix of things: more trade barriers, all this uncertainty from geopolitics, investors getting nervous.
And that squeeze on aid and climate finance you mentioned.
Yeah, that's particularly worrying for developing nations. Major donors, the US, UK, France, they're cutting back support. So there's this big shortfall for countries trying to meet climate goals, even basic development needs. And you see caution everywhere. Central banks, like the Bank of England, holding rates at 4.25% because of these risks. Others are hesitant too. Okay, so economic headwinds. And then there's the climate crisis, which this report really emphasizes is deeply tied into all this. Environmental strain. We're seeing intense heat waves in Europe right now. Spain topping 42 Celsius. And the forecast for England and Wales alone, around 600 heat-related deaths expected. That's a heavy human cost.
It truly is. And it's not just Europe. Asia, for instance, is warming nearly twice as fast as the global average, looking at the period 1991 to 2024. That means worse extreme weather, more economic damage, huge ecological stress, and think about the oceans.
The coral reefs.
Exactly. Over 84% of the world's reefs are hit by the ongoing global bleaching event 2023 to 2025. It's the largest ever recorded. That's a direct threat to marine life, coastal economies, everything.
It's staggering. Okay, finally, let's look at the societal pressures, because these seem like a direct result of all these other strains. The report points to declining workers' rights hitting record lows in Europe and the Americas. That's according to the ITUC Global Rights Index.
Yeah, and if you connect that dot, it links directly to growing global inequality. Think about this. 95% of wealth gains went to the top 5%. That's not just unfair, it fuels real discontent structurally. We're also seeing, a pullback from globalization. Foreign direct investment, FDI, is falling. Trade protectionism is rising.
Which hurts emerging economies most.
Absolutely, the ones often relying on that global trade and investment. So these conflicts, the economic volatility, it all just ramps up the pressure. We urgently need more resilient climate strategies, more sustainable, equitable policies. Otherwise, the social fabric itself could really start to fray.
So putting it all together for you, our listener, we've walked through these four big trends: the geopolitical flashpoints, the fragile economy, climate stress, societal strains. They're not just separate issues, are they? They're deeply interconnected, creating this really complex web of global challenges.
Exactly. And understanding how these forces overlap and interact it's crucial. Knowing these dynamics helps you make better sense of the world around you because it really is all connected.
It really is. So here's a thought to leave you with. Given these compounding pressures we've discussed, how does understanding these dynamics change your perspective on global resilience and maybe our adaptability? Something to think about until our next deep dive.